Hi, everybody. It's fantastic to be able to do this conversation today on the business of entertainment and the future of the business of entertainment with Uday Shankar and Ajay Bijli. Given both the companies that they represent and it is going to be a far and wide conversation because we're going to be talking about cinema, we're going to be talking about sports, we're going to talk about streaming and everything else in between, and television, of course. Going to start with you, Uday. We've just seen the IPL, and the one adjective that everyone's using to talk about the IPL is biggest ever. Did you think in March, April, when COVID hit us and the lockdown happened, that we would be sitting in November and using the word biggest ever to describe the IPL?
No, to be honest, Anuradha, we didn't think that it would be the biggest IPL because in March, April, nobody knew where the world was going to be. First of all, when IPL was suspended, we all, being the eternal optimists that human beings are, we all felt that it was going to be for a few weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And then we started thinking, after all, how long can it go on for? And so nobody knew. But when nothing was happening, literally the whole world was in a lockdown, there was a massive starvation for content and live sports, then we realized that whenever IPL happened, it would be a really big one, because given how passionate Indians are about cricket, and when cricket came back, we realized that it would be big. However, we also knew that there were going to be huge challenges, because this was the first time the whole tournament was going to be played in empty stadiums. Travel would be difficult. So we had to get ready for that. We knew that it could be the biggest, or it could be the most disastrous.
Right.
If we did not do the right things.
So given that it's turned out to be the biggest, you want to throw some numbers at us to give us a real sense of the scale. We know that viewership has gone up, but give us a sense of the revenues, give us a sense of everything else that made it so big.
I usually don't like to talk about revenues, and I know you and I have been at this game for almost 15 years when you've been trying to get numbers out of me and I have been trying to duck them. But
talk about the business of anything without numbers and hard data, Uday. So, and you're lucky you're not listed in this country, so you can get away by ducking. But give us a broad sense of the scale.
So, broad sense, I'll tell you. It is by far, and on a serious note, let me just tell you why we do not share numbers, because we are not listed here. However, we are part of a globally listed company. Yes. And we have very strong protocols around what we can share and because the information is market sensitive. So we generally leave it all for the headquarters to compile and share at the right time. I can tell you, as you said, in terms of viewership, it is by far the biggest IPL. I mean, it's bigger than any other IPL by 25, if not 30%. And even in terms of revenue, it's been very successful. And we have been astounded by the kind of response that we saw from advertisers and consumers both, because we knew that it was going to be big, but that it turned out to be so big and it held through the tournament. I think that's been extremely satisfying. It also tells you how people were very keen for life and small joys of life to triumph over everything else, all the concerns and miseries. So it's finally about that. It's about power of cricket. It's about people's desire to let life prevail over everything else. And it's about the creativity that Star Network brings in.
Yeah, one quick follow-up, and then Ajay, I'm going to move to you. And that is, I think, the timing when it did finally happen, given that it came after several of the unlocks, and given that it came, with the run-up, or in the run-up to Diwali, I think was also another sweet spot, isn't it? Which was not expected before, but it happened to be a perfect kind of
for sure
sweet spot.
For sure, but look, it happened at the right time. But this wasn't a festival season like any other festival season. Yeah. It was very muted. People were worried. They were still not going out and shopping and having fun the way they would normally in a festival season. And it's also a fact that there has been economic hardship on a lot of consumers. So given all of that, the Diwali, of course, the festival season and Diwali and Durga Puja, they helped. But just imagine if it was a normal Diwali, how much bigger it could have been.
Right. Ajay, you represent a business that was among the first to open. Multiplexes were the first to open and among the last to, you represent a business that, was the first to close and among the last to reopen. Mid-October is when the good news came in, or October is when the good news came in, and mid-October is when you all opened PVR Cinemas up. Give us a sense of the experience that you've had in terms of footfalls and people coming in, given that you don't really have new releases. You have a few new releases, but they're all small movies.
Yeah. Just a couple of opening remarks. First of all, thanks to HT for having me on this panel, and also having Uday as a co-panelist and you as a moderator. So it's quite incredible. I also want to just step back a little bit and talk about the fact that it is a devastating, pandemic that has happened, and a lot of people have got, they've lost 60 million people worldwide have got impacted. 1.4 million people have died. So first of all, my heart goes out to people who've been badly affected. Having said that, I also, also feel that for some people, life has got disrupted, but for some people, life has only got interrupted, because we still have a population of 7 billion in this world. And in my business, if I just come straight to what you're asking, 6.25 billion people went to see movies last year in 2019 globally, over 200,000 screens. So I think it's an aberration here where this happened. I mean, we all have become historians as well now. Bubonic plague, Spanish plague, Great Depression, all that. But every time it has bounced back. The human, the Aristotle said, is a social being. He bounces back, and pain and loss is something that humans are very resilient for. So I think this period of opening in October with 50% capacity with old movies is really not a barometer of shape of things to come. Obviously, cinema is an incomplete experience till you get brand new movies. Cinema is an incomplete experience and is also impacted by the surge still happening.
Yes.
It had gone down a little bit pre-Diwali, then it went up again. So I think that tentativeness is still there. The vaccine is not out. So I would not measure currently. So we are a single-digit occupancy currently with old movies. But so that's not what is bothering me. What is making me happy is the fact that the people are so keen to get brand new movies. They're so keen to get out because they were literally incarcerated in their homes. And we are not configured, we are not designed to stay at home. Human beings are not hardwired to stay at home. So that is what still gives me a lot of hope and confidence that once the surge comes down, the vaccine comes, films start coming back on the screen, this is going to revive. And I think people will be, the pent-up demand will be just huge. So currently very small, about India's got about 9,500 screens, about 5,000 odd screens have opened. But as I said, there are regional successes, like some Tamil movies got released, so Tamil cinemas did well. In Bengali, there's a movie called Dracula that did well. So Calcutta did well. Punjab, the Diljit Dosanjh movie did well.
So Ajay, right. So Ajay, next week, that's December 4th, Friday, you're going to see Christopher Nolan's Tenet release here. Is that going to be a test case of some sort? Of course, not to compare with a big Hindi film or any other language regional film blockbuster, but will this give you a little bit of a better idea of the appetite for cinema in COVID times?
Not entirely. It's a very big movie. Amongst the, I mean, today every new movie that comes is a blockbuster for me. I'm very happy. Okay, so but Tenet, definitely Christopher Nolan has a huge track record. It's on IMAX. It's a proper movie meant for the big screen. So I think, and it's not come on PVOD as yet on your pay-per-view channel as yet. So I think it will be a good ultimate indication, like an 83. Cricket and cricket and movies getting combined is phenomenal. Suryavanshi, all these movies will be a much better barometer, but still this will be much better than the kind of movies that we've been playing. Also, Tenet is a slightly confusing storyline. So even worldwide, the box office collection stopped at 350 million, as opposed to at least 1 billion easily a movie of Christopher Nolan would do. Plus, fits and starts happen. Some cinemas opens up, close, and then close. But generally speaking, I think people's pent-up appetite is so much that I think Tenet on the 4th of December will be. And your tickets are done, by the way, in any case. Yeah.
So I'm going to wait to see advance bookings open. No favors. The journalists cannot accept favors. But Uday, let's talk about movies from your perspective. You took Lakshmi Bomb, Dil Bechara, Loot Case, and I think one or two other films, Sadak, I think, Sadak 2, directly to the streaming service, right? What was the experience? What are you seeing of the appetite for mainstream Hindi films on streaming services, on Hotstar, on Disney Plus Hotstar?
Look, first of all, it was an experiment. And I think from our point of view, this experiment worked out really well. But you have to also understand the context of it. This was done in a very unusual time. The movies were free. And they were, waiting to be released. Many of them, not all of them. Some of them, like Lakshmi, are very big movies, but many of them were also boutique movies. And we realized that when the movies were going to be released, finally, when the theaters opened, even then there would be a sort of, jam for the theatrical screen space, and not all the movies will get the same attention. So some movies came in and people were starved, for fresh content. So those movies have done really well on the
Lakshmi Bomb. I mean, how did that fare? Because I was talking to some people who said that a movie like Lakshmi Bomb would have done better in a theater.
Look, we can all be astrologers and say anything can do better. Obviously, the theatrical experience, as Ajay was saying, is a very different experience. There is nothing that can match that experience. And when there is a big star like Akshay Kumar or someone like that, then obviously that's huge. It becomes an event movie. But here, Disney Plus Hotstar is the biggest streaming platform, not just in this country, but probably outside of the US and China. There is nothing as big as that. So we have such a steady base of subscribers, and the movie was made available to them without any extra effort. So obviously the movie was very, very, very big. Its performance was very good. But it would be inappropriate to measure or compare the performance of that movie on Disney Plus Hotstar versus what it would have been in theater. It would have made, a very different kind of impact in the theaters.
So, Ajay just mentioned 83. There's 83 and Suryavanshi, and he says that the producer is confident of holding on for a theatrical release. Would you, after the Lakshmi Bomb experience, say that it would be better to, sort of sit on those movies, even at great cost to the producer, but wait for the theatrical release? And do you see that theatrical release happen even before a vaccine is out?
So you're asking for my comment generally, or if you're asking me to discuss my strategy on
what do you think, Uday?
On this show?
What do you think? You want to make me happy? Pick the latter.
As they say in my business, stay tuned, you will get to know about it.
Ajay, he's happily ducked it, saying strategy. But what is happening? Give me a sense of, because really we know how hard it is for producers to hold on. We know how hard it has been for these movies, these huge mega budget films. And we also know that streamers the OTT services are still going after these movies. So what is your sense? Would an 83 release even before a vaccine?
See, I first of all, as I said, it was an aberration. What is going on? It's something which has never happened before. And Uday and I spoke also a few weeks ago. And I don't blame anyone. I don't blame anybody for what happened in the last 8-9 months, because in fact, sport wasn't happening. I remember we had a long chat, Uday. At that time, no cricket, no football, no tennis, nothing was happening. So even the streaming services were deprived of fresh content. So people even Netflixes of the world, nothing new was getting developed. So at that, and on the other hand, you had these filmmakers who'd already made lots of movies, and they also, their meter was stuck, ticking as well. So in India, you don't have like 4 studios who make like 100 odd movies. In India, 1,500 films made by about 2,000 mom and pop and son. So their meter was ticking. So I knew this would happen. But at the same time, you cannot change the economics of the business. And in the economics of the business, still $42 billion got generated from box office worldwide from 2019, out of which $21 billion went back to the studios. Let's say 50% went to the theater owners, 200,000 screens. So I think the economic rationale is still there to release the movie theatrically first. So I think that even before the vaccine, if the surge comes down, this surge is something that's bothering me, obviously bothering everybody, not me, but suddenly the spike has happened. But if the spike comes down, then also I think some of these filmmakers will release the movie theatrically, because these movies are meant for the big screen. And even 50% capacity is okay, because cinemas run at 29, 30% occupancies. And Monday to Thursday, in any case, is much lower. And even 12 to 14 weeks in a year is all you get above 60% on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 50% is a good cap, and they can have much longer runs. So I believe 60% of the revenues of a film still comes from theatrical. So I think that they will wait for theatrical, and then they will go to the other monetizable windows.
Right. Really, you mentioned the mom and pop nature, or pop and son nature of the film producers in this country. How will they be able to hold out, especially when streamers are willing to offer money, and where some streamers have deep pockets? And most streamers, I mean, before this session started, we were talking about Bob Iger and his story and his journey at Disney. And, look at the kind of hard decisions they made to launch Disney Plus, and they realized that the future is streaming. And, even the 20th Century Fox acquisition was in order to aid and abet Disney Plus's fortunes. So how do you see these small Indian producers, in relative terms, hold out in this scenario?
You see, again, I'll go back to the economics of it. If you look at it, for me, nothing is small or big. In fact, a movie is a blockbuster, not because of its budget. A movie is a blockbuster because of its box office collections. So if you look at previous years, you've had movies with Rajkumar Rao, Ayushmann Khurrana, Razi, lots of small, what they call sleeper hits. They all came and they became huge hits. So I think the economic rationale still remains, whether it's a movie made with small amount of budget or a large budget, to first release it theatrically. And there's a lot of opportunities for the same content once it gets connected with the consumer. That's very important. The content must get connected with the consumer. It must do well at the box office. Then the monetization happens in a many-fold way. So if you straight away go to an OTT platform or a streaming service, you're losing out on that opportunity for that monetizing journey that's been happening since time immemorial, of first getting the 60-70% revenues on theatrical. Then you go to your PVOD, which is more prevalent in America, PVOD and TVOD, which is a premium video on demand, pay-per-view. Then you go to SVOD, satellite. So I think the monetization capacity of a good content that has got connected is much larger when you go through that journey. So I think what is happening is seriously because of this only. The pandemic is there. Cinemas are at 50% capacity. Therefore, these people are going ahead and releasing the movies. Even from the OTT player's point of view, I believe, I can't speak on his behalf. I think theaters do also provide a filtration process. You get to know which movies have been given the right verdict by the consumer. You also get to know the box office performance. And then they are also able to gauge how much should be paid for the movie. Because movies are like a closed parachute. Only once the parachute is down, whether it's open or not. So you go on the track record of the actor, you go on the track record of the producer, director, and you do this blind child. So what happens is when the movie is theatrically performed, then you say, maybe I shouldn't be betting this much for it. So I think water finds its own level when you go through that withdrawing process.
Uday, did you catch that bit about how streamers and OTT platforms should be valuing movies, or could be valuing movies? Did you catch that bit of the answer? And what do you think of it?
I just heard the last part of it, but look, I think we should be mindful of creating a binary argument here, streaming versus theaters. Theaters are a totally different ball game. There is nothing that's going to happen to them. My own assessment is that after the pandemic is over and people return to normal life, theaters are going to get even bigger simply because people have been, again, devoid of this kind of a totally unique experience. Because when somebody goes to see a movie, they go to see, they go for a whole complex experience, and streaming is not competing with that. It can never compete with that, and I don't think any streamer has any ambition towards that. What is happening is that big movies will become bigger, and they would certainly, people will make individual choices, but by and large, big movies will definitely, for a long time, they will continue to go to big screens. And after that, they will find their way on a streaming platform.
So Uday, I can't resist this. You're hoping that by the time Brahmastra is ready, everything is sorted and the theaters, the vaccine is there and the theaters are open and Brahmastra goes straight to the theaters.
So since you brought up Brahmastra, look, it is the biggest ever movie made in this country.
300 crores?
Again,
okay, no numbers. Okay.
You have to be given full marks for trying. but just to tell you, it's way more than that.
Sure.
And hence, a big movie like that, again, the experience that it seeks to create needs to straddle across everything, and it cannot be denied the most intense experience that only a theater can generate. So I think that will be the case, with movies everywhere in the world. My company makes the world's biggest movies and the world's most successful movies, and we are making some really small boutique movies as well. So I think, it's not that before the pandemic hit, streaming services did not have movies, and occasionally movies premiered there also. I just think that the spotlight is now and there on the movies that are releasing on streaming platform, but we should be careful about posing that as a binary. Theaters are there. Theaters are only going to get bigger as better technology, better experience, better lifestyle, involvement comes in theaters. They're only going to get bigger, and bigger movies are going to go there. You just heard Ajay talk about Tenet. If it has released in a theater, there is a certain kind of audience that loves Christopher Nolan, but would want to go to the theater to watch Christopher Nolan because what he does with sound, what he does with camera work, etc., all of that can be best experienced in a theater.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about television, Uday, because, we saw the IPL and we talked about live sports and the hunger for live sports and what the IPL managed to satisfy by its timing and just by its experience. What about the other stuff? What about general entertainment? What about niche entertainment? We know about, the English entertainment channels, sell by date has come and gone. What is happening to television? Because I think what has happened this year, the COVID-19 experience, I know Ajay wants to call it an aberration and an interruption, but Ajay, I'm going to say disruption, global disruption. This is what they talk about in business school all the time, disruption, and here it was. And I'm guessing that all businesses, all industries have had a chance to really relook at everything because of this challenge of just survival. So Uday, television and the impact on television and how television will change as a result of everything that has happened this year.
So, look, there are disruptions and there are interruptions, and there are those that happen by design and those that happen accidentally. COVID has been an accidental interruption and nobody was prepared for that.
Sure.
I think you saw an immediate spike, even though fresh content was not coming on TV. You saw an immediate spike because, people were disoriented. They wanted something. They were sitting at home and, they were watching whatever they were watching. And the media made a big deal about, the 30-year-old mythological show is doing so well, etc. But those were very short-lived. They came, they were flashes in the pan, and they came and they went away. And after that, good content has prevailed. And that is what is going to happen every time. And even now, if you see, the IPL has been successful, that doesn't mean that every sport tournament all over the world is going to be lapped up. I mean, the experience that we had with IPL hasn't been the same for other sports or other leagues in Europe and North America. Many of them haven't really done so well because people expect primarily, people need their attention to be held by content, whether it is movie, dramas, live sports. You can get some attention because people are living in unusual times, but that's not enough to hold the sustained attention. And that is why in TV, we have seen, at Star, the entertainment network share is at a historic high. It's an unprecedented high. No television network has ever had that kind of share that Star has right now. But that's also because, unlike a lot of other companies in India and globally, what we at Star and at Hotstar did not do was to pull back. We decided to use that as an opportunity. And we started putting best content, we started putting more content, and we started investing in building our viewership. And that is why we are benefiting from it, because I am convinced that there would be, someday the pandemic would end, and hopefully sooner than later. And once that ends, the real strength of the consumer offering will be the only thing that will hold you in good stead. So.
But if I were to go beyond the big language entertainment channels and look at the niche channels, their case for just their business, the business case for niche channels is in the entertainment genre. Is it time to say that business case is done? That there is no potential? In this country,
that business case has come under a huge challenge. But unfortunately, that's one of the things that you can't blame on the COVID, because for that.
Yeah. That's also the streaming services.
No, it's not the streaming services. It's also the kind of regulatory dispensation in which we are operating in India. Television has been a huge victim of regulatory, thoughtlessness. There's just no other way of describing this. And that is really, really, that's come in the way of it, because you've created a mechanism whereby only the mass market channels can get visibility, because you cannot do bundling. I don't want to bore your audiences with the details of it, but the struggle that niche content is facing in this country is primarily on account of the business construct that has been pushed through regulation rather than anything else. Because I still believe that people want to watch high quality content, and niche content is called niche only because, not because it has, only because few people want to watch it, but they are really passionate about it. Unfortunately, for them to discover it and access it is becoming increasingly difficult. On streaming services, it's available, and that's why our experience on streaming services for niche content is very different from what it is on TV.
For the better or for the worse?
On streaming platforms, much better.
Exactly. Therefore, then, given the regulatory construct and the challenges that has posed, thanks to TRAI regulations, and on the other hand, the fact that OTT and streamers have this huge, vast global library of absolutely high quality niche content, that's finished, right? The English niche channels are gone.
I don't know whether they're gone. Look, first of all, from a consumer point of view, whether that content appears on a TV screen or it appears on a streaming service, it doesn't really make a difference. So they're not gone. If content has power, it will find a way to, to get itself into your living rooms and on your devices. And that is what is happening. It's just that a certain sector, which is TV in this case, will struggle. And that is what is happening right now.
Talking about the regulatory framework in the context of streaming, we just saw earlier this month, OTT and streaming, whether it's entertainment or news, has gone under the INB ministry. What impact will that have on the nature of content, you think? Ajay, you can also weigh in on this. Absolutely.
Look, I think there is, if television content is regulated, it's difficult to make a case for that same content will, same kind of content going on streaming services will not be regulated. And if somebody has to regulate, somebody in the government has to regulate. So I think it's more than anything else. It's just it's an official decision. I don't think, it really matters. What is important is what will be the lens of regulation. Do we really want to, be over prescriptive, or do we want creativity and imagination to have a role in this? And do we really, are we going to think that the country is, in my experience, the country and the consumers have always been way ahead of where the government and the regulators believe they are. They are far more open, they are far more mature, but we just seem to believe that they are, they're totally immature and they need to be, only a huge filter needs to be applied before they get anything. So I don't think it's about who manages it, how is it regulated, and what's the framework, what's the lens that we apply is the more important thing.
So
one last thing. Also, you have to understand that streaming is global and the volumes are so huge. I'm not sure how it is going to be, how easy or difficult it is going to be to regulate all of the content, because we are still a democracy, we still have a constitution. And if we, within the framework of that, the providers have access to judicial redress. They have the rights to go to government and make their case. So I think it's a gigantic challenge, even to manage that.
I have a follow-up, but let me get Ajay in here. Ajay, we saw what movie certification has done, right? So you have cuts, you have name changes, and of course you have superficial but really irritating experiences of smoking kills every time someone lights up a cigarette, right? And then the streamers and OTT content has gone completely the other end. It's gone to the other end of the spectrum where you can see anything you want to, which is great. Some of it is gratuitous, I will say, but on the whole, it's absolutely mind-blowing to see that kind of freedom. Where do you think this regulatory lens, what kind of lens will be used? Do you see a lot of constraints coming in, even though Uday says that it's going to be a mind-boggling challenge to be able to regulate?
No, I agree with Uday that it will be regressive. I think consumers are already used to a certain type of content which is there. I also think that sanctity of what is getting created should not be compromised at all. At the same time, if certification can happen, that I'm okay with. At least because when I'm sitting at home and I put something on with my kids, if it says it's PG or if it says it's R-rated, that kind of certification is fine. But I don't think the creative fraternities' ability to create what they want to should be having these cuts and spoiling the whole flow of the content. I think that will be regressive. But certification is fine. That happens in cinema.
And Anuradha, I think Ajay and I are saying the same thing. But I also have to say that we should not be insensitive to the country, the culture, and we should not take the freedom for granted. And I think this is what happens when the so-called global services come into the country and they disregard everything, because they believe that what works in a country can work in every country. Then this is the backlash, and this is avoided.
Do you think this could have been avoided?
I think some amount of, I don't know whether it could have been avoided or not, but some amount of responsible behavior was very important, because this is a sensitive country. It's a very diverse country. Governments have generally been very particular about, and I'm not defending that the governments have been generally in overdrive. I'm not a fan of regulation, and I'm not a fan of censorship. It hasn't helped. It has only created a black market. However, irresponsible behavior in the name of creativity is clearly not something that I can defend. And I don't need someone to tell me what is irresponsible, what is not, because I have been doing that for 30 years myself.
Can you give me an example? I'm not understanding.
So what you call the gratuitous content, I know you are egging me on, but I will, give into that. I think the amount of abusive language, sex, violence, even though they all exist in our lives, do they really serve a constructive purpose by showing them on every service? And we all know that some of it is being shown just in order to get attention. There is no other reason. There is, if a story genuinely deserves that, I understand, but a lot of times it is just in order. I mean, it's pandering to the, to attention.
Okay. What do you make of the TRP scandal that affected news? I know it's not your genre, but it's not beyond the remit of this conversation, Uday, because there has been a government-appointed panel to look at the rating system, and that is directly how television viewership and therefore advertising revenues get affected.
Look, I don't want to talk about the TRP scandal, except to say that how many things the government wants to regulate. That, who watches how much TV? Is that the most important thing to be regulated in this country? In the middle of a pandemic, when there are so many things going, so many things are crying for urgent attention. Is that what we want to control now? That, Anuradha and Uday are fighting that my ratings are higher and your ratings are lower. And we should just decide, somebody should be appointed to look into who has higher ratings. Is that the most important thing? I find the whole thing slightly ridiculous.
Okay, well said. Ajay, you talked about the kind of bets that people make on movies when you decide that you want this movie. You have a sense of what kind of response it'll get from viewers, and that is something that also comes from your passion for cinema, your personal passion for cinema, not just the business that you run. Give me a sense of what kind of stories you think will get greenlit going forward, given that we've had such a challenging year, all of us personally, at in various aspects of our life. Do you think more escapism, more good old formulaic stories and filmmaking will rule the roost going forward? Or do you see the Delhi crime kind of gritty storytelling that just got this international Emmy getting greenlit? What is your gut of what people will want to see at the movies? The Delhi crime is not a movie.
No, well, I think, as I said earlier, 1,500 films went through the system in India, regional, international, everything. 4,500 films got made globally last year, which went to the cinemas. So I think it's going to be a variety. All sorts of movies will come, and it's all about entertainment. Everybody tells the story that he wants to tell. So the same type of movies that were coming earlier will continue to come, whether it's an all-out entertainer or it's a movie which is family-oriented or whichever other genre one can categorize into serious film, whatever. It has to be a content that connects with the consumer. I think at every, and on all the channels, whether it's theatrical, whether it's OTT, whether it's SVOD or TVOD or any of the channels, I think people want to only go and watch those movies which they connect with. And they have to do justice to the genre. If it's a funny movie, you want to laugh. If it's a Brahmastra, you want to go to the world of make-believe. Yeah. And if it's one of those amazing Marvel movies. So I feel continuously everybody is going to keep pushing the envelope, and all sorts of movies will come. Which is what I was telling you earlier, that I don't believe in the segregation between big budget and small budget in terms of the potential of the movie. So a blockbuster is not defined by the budget. A blockbuster is defined by the theatrical box office it has done. So I think that a lot of smaller movies which were made in smaller budget did exceedingly well last year. And I think that's the beauty, that, those movies should be played out for as long as they can be, so that the full potential can be exploited. So I see a variety of films coming, to answer your question. I don't think depressing stuff is going to come. This is larger than life entertainment. People want to have fun. It's escapism.
So I have one question, after which I'm going to take a few viewer questions, audience questions, and that is to both of you, which is that we are this year brought home to the fact that digitization and the online world has got accelerated, the adoption and the use of it in all spheres of life, right? Whether it's our consumption of entertainment and news, whether it is learning, whether it's communicating, digital is the word that defined 2020. Even though lockdown is the word of the year for some dictionaries. Where do you think in the future of entertainment, the power equilibrium will be in favor of? The technology companies who are moving into entertainment, or the entertainment companies who are trying to use technology to stay on top? So, you have Apple doing Apple TV, you have Google going all out to create YouTube content, to commission content and not just leave it as crowdsourced. And then you have the Disneys of the world, which, are going full steam ahead to get Disney Plus seeded everywhere and create content for it. Uday, you want to quickly answer that?
I think
who has the advantage, tech or the legacy entertainment companies?
I don't think we can look at it like that. Look, for the longest time in businesses like television, we were very, we had content, and you needed technology as a platform to be able to deliver the content. Now, what technology has done, that tech and creativity both have come together, and they have both become very dynamic. In the same way that a new episode of content has to be uploaded every day, the consumer experience needs to be tweaked and changed every day. And I think it's a process that goes hand in hand. There will be some tech companies who probably will succeed in in morphing into a tech plus creative company. There'll be some creative company who will transition, like Disney, primarily a creative company, has done phenomenally well in a very short time in becoming a streaming service. So, but not everybody will be able to make that journey, and regardless of where they start from. So not all tech companies will succeed, and not all creative companies will succeed.
So if I were to get a job offer from Apple and Netflix, which one should, from both of them, which one would you advise me to take out there?
Apply for a job at Disney.
You're not going to be there very long, so what's the point? Ajay, quickly weigh in on that. I have to take a couple of audience questions.
No, just I mean, Uday's covered everything, but basically it is an enabler. Digital will always be an enabler for the creative people, whether it's at the time of creating content, whether it's during delivery. It's not going to replace it completely, but definitely there is no question about the digital is very much entwined in our lives. And also it's a very interesting time. I mean, Disney, of course, is a massive exception, and but that they've done an incredible job in terms of creative company going digital. But look at these big behemoths like Apple, Amazon. Everyone is getting into content. So I think the lines are really blurring between technology and creativity. And it's fantastic time for consumers as well, because they're going to get so much choice of content on so many platforms. It's just phenomenal.
All right. Okay, I have a few questions here, many of them directed towards Ajay about the movie-going experience. So Subodh wants to know, keeping the pandemic in mind, how safe do you think it's to watch a movie in a closed environment with the AC/heating turned on? We've heard so many reports, studies say that droplet transmission was prompted by air-conditioned ventilation.
In fact, on the contrary, in fact, when we were talking to MHA, the Ministry of Home Affairs, to allow us to open, one of the cues that we got from Johns Hopkins and various other studies that were done were that in cinemas, first of all, the heights are 9 meters. So in fact, in aeroplanes and metros and restaurants, you don't have 9-meter heights. This is like massive height. In any case, your building bylaws make you have HEPA filters and everything. And people, when they're sitting in a cinema, it's the behavior of the people that matters more than where you are. So people in a cinema actually are looking at the screen. They're not talking to each other. Only when they have to have popcorn, Pepsi, they'll bring the mask down. Yet again, no communication is happening. In fact, Uday and I were just chatting before the show, and I was saying this cricket is going on. Now that, in the pecking order, audiences in a sporting was considered to be a higher risk for aerosol spread. Concerts, music concerts, bars, pubs, a lot of countries in the pecking order first opened the cinemas because the social behavior of people in cinemas is much quieter and much less conducive to spread than anything else. And
okay. There's a follow-up question, a related question. Harpreet Singh wants to know, apart from great film releases, is there anything else you can do to get audiences back into the movies?
I think films are very, very important, and confidence building of people is very important, which has only happened that, I mean, when all these AstraZeneca, Pfizers and Modernas of the world, they have to somehow find the way to logistically get this vaccine to everybody. All I can do is I can make the experience complete and safe.
So movies, multiplexes, cinemas, cinema halls have to do movies. Merlin Thomas, Ajay wants to know how PVR employees, how are your employees? How is the team at PVR taking the pandemic on? Keep giving that they've been closed for so long and without work. How do you keep motivating them?
I found it absolutely incredible and touching what they did. They are in fact, they're motivated. In fact, Disney has one example we've taken from Disney that we've tried to make it more experiential now. I think if there is one difference that will happen between watching at home and going out, will be experience. So these guys are singing, they're dancing, they are finding different ways that when consumers come over there, so they're having a ball, to be honest with you. So we've given them a lot of freedom to what they feel like.
Okay, I'm being asked to wind up. Uday, there was a question for you, but I think I can answer on your behalf. The question was, how has COVID-19 impacted the revenue model of IPL? Has it affected the revenues at all? No, they've made a lot of money. Uday is feeling good that he bet so much money 5 years ago to get those IPL rights. And is that the right answer, Uday?
No comments.
Okay, I tried. Thank you. Ajay, Uday, thank you. I wish you both good luck on your journeys ahead. And thank you very much for being part of this conversation.